what responsibility do you have for the actions of guests at your party if they go out and hurt somebody else?
Right.
But then also, what duty do you have and what obligation do you have to anybody who comes to your house and is injured while on the premises, hurts themselves? So two different things. Ray brings up a good point, which is start with make sure your insurance policy is in effect. The last thing you want is to find out that somebody slipped and fell on your front stoop because you didn't put de-icer out and it was 20 degrees outside and wet and icy, and they get hurt and crack their skull, and then you contact your insurance company and say, hey, we sent you a notice 6 months ago, you hadn't paid your premiums, your insurance was canceled. So you now are personally responsible if there was any damage and if there's a legitimate claim. So start from that premise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's a good place to start for sure.
The other thing, Ray mentioned this one party that they said, we want proof of vaccination. It's very hard to make a claim against somebody if you contract COVID-19. But this was interesting. This party, the invitations went out over Evite, right? It's so easy these days to put, if you wanted people to have a release, when you RSVP, check this box and you could put the terms of your waiver and release. I release the homeowner from any responsibility if I'm injured on their premises. I release them from any responsibility if my actions cause harm to some third party. You could put whatever you want there and people just check it like we check everything online without reading it.
I mean, why do certain venues have you wear a wristband? Because they've checked your ID up front, therefore you can buy alcohol, so they're not serving an underage person. I mean, as the owner or controller of the party, you can set the rules. Now, what you've also got to do, just because you make the rules doesn't mean you can then turn
Enforce
a blind eye.
Yeah.
So one of these, it's called Dram Shop for businesses. Dram being the shot of rum that the sailors used to get when they served on the high seas if they did a good day, or host liability, which is really for your home or your party at the lake. Bars and restaurants have really got to be careful. And again, one of the big problems that bars and restaurants and other purveyors of alcohol have is they don't know what the guest has done all day long before they came to dinner at 7:30 and then ordered a bottle of wine. Perhaps that bottle of wine is the third act in a 3-act play of drinking. Perhaps it's the first. So again, there used to be a program that Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch did called Tips, where they trained anyone who bought, bar that bought a lot of Budweiser products. They would train their bartenders and their waiters to look for the signs of alcohol. Unfortunately, at a .08, which is the legal limit, right? A lot of us can function pretty well at .08, sadly. Right. It takes a lot of experience. But so you want, if you're a restaurant, you want to have your folks take that training. You want to have some things posted. You want to have some rules. And you can't be afraid to cut somebody off. They may make some noise about it. A lot of stadiums stop serving beer after the 7th inning or
halftime.
Rules like that. So you've got to be careful and don't think it can't happen to you. It's always the one guy who's had too many but can hide it. And as Bruce says, here's a prominent local lawyer. I'm sure he was at a party or a restaurant or a bar and nobody cut him off, and he wound up killing 2 people and changing so many lives because somebody served him 1 or 2, or he bought 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, right. It seems like there's so many layers. But when I think about, like, if I were to host a party at my house, that would be now that you've said it, Bruce, I would probably say, hey, let's make sure our insurance is. I know we've paid our insurance, but let's make sure it's all covered and a lot of people are coming over. But because you've said that would trigger me to think that. I don't know that I've ever even considered having somebody sign a waiver to come to a party at my house. It just seems like.
Yeah, but you can do it on, Bruce pointed out, great. You just, at the bottom of the Evite,
right, if you do the
Evite, put all the disclaimers and check it.
Nobody thinks
off.
this way.
Only lawyers think this way.
Ray and I have a warped view of the world because of the jobs we do, but nobody thinks like this.
And we reverse engineer all these problems that people bring to us, and then we sort of say, well, at the root of this was a simple check or a waiver.
So let's talk about some other things then separate from the waiver, right? If you're hosting a party and you're doing this at your house, whatever, it's a great time to do a fresh assessment of what hazards exist on this property that I take for granted because I live with them every day.
And I know where to step or not to step.
I know that there's a loose handrail. I know that there's a missing step here or a stone that comes loose every time I step on this.
Or an uneven sidewalk.
Yeah, things like that. So do a critical self-assessment, and then when you come across these things, number one, correct them if you can. A big one at parties tends to be lighting. that you're going to do something outdoors at your house, and there are dark areas, right? And so that, okay, at the bottom of that dark area, I know there's steps. I'm going to be ready for that. But the person who comes to your house for the first time may not know that there are steps there, may not have 20/20 vision, may have had 2 drinks that you provided to them, and may fall down those steps without realizing that they're even there. So do what you can, illuminate, right? Light things up literally like a Christmas tree so that people can see where they're going. When there are dangerous conditions like loose rocks or steps that are broken or handrails that are broken, fix them in advance of the party. Great opportunity for you to sort of go through and fix up your things that are falling apart.
And especially if you've been put on notice, that's a really important word in the law for these type of cases, from your homeowners association that says, hey, by the way, we did an inspection and the front rail of your steps down to the sidewalk are loose, need to be repaired immediately, and 6 months later you don't do it, and the rail falls at the Christmas party and somebody falls and breaks their arm. You've got a problem now. You are been put on notice by people who are supposed to do that. You let an unreasonable amount of time go by before curing the problem. That is a simple problem to cure. Probably get somebody out there to fix it or tighten up the bolts. So you've got to, if you're on notice of a problem, whether it's your bad tires on your car because you went and had them rotated and they came back and said you've got no brakes left and you're riding on the, you're riding on the cords, right, and then you have an accident. That's excess liability. That can be punitive damages for ignoring a clear-cut warning to a danger.
Here's another one. You're having people to your house, and you know that you have a dog that has a propensity to get very uptight and attack people when they're at the house because it's happened before, right? So this dog has bitten folks before because there's loud music or there's people around and the dog gets nervous, whatever the reason is. And now you're inviting people to your home, but not taking appropriate precautions to have the dog elsewhere for the night or make sure that dog is safely closed in a room somewhere where nobody's going to go. If you're just letting that dog roam around when you know, because it's happened before, that the dog has a history of biting people, if it happens at that party because somebody sees your sweet-looking dog and wants to pet him and the dog bites them on the hand or face in the process, guess what? You're on the hook for that too, because it's just as if you had a hole in your backyard and you tried to cover it up, but you didn't fill it in. You're going to be responsible for knowing that you had a dangerous
We can do a whole
condition.
show on dog bite cases because they go about prior behavior. What were you notified of? Has it nipped at somebody before? Did you train the dog? Has it been professionally trained? There are some breeds of dogs that your insurance company, your homeowner's policy will make you buy a separate addendum dog bite policy.
So it's like a pit bull, Rottweiler,
some of
those.
And look, I'm a dog lover.
Yeah, me too.
And nothing's friendlier than a big 150-pound Rottie. They're just big babies until they clamp somebody and
right,
with 5,000 pounds of pressure. And they usually don't. But there are certain breeds that insurance companies charge you extra for.
All right, what happens in that? So we'll stay on the dog. Let's say, because we have a little bitty Schnauzer puppy, right? He's a year old, and we're going through the process of teaching him not to snip. He doesn't bite. He's never broken skin, but he'll nip just because he's a puppy.
Yeah, there's a difference. And,
right.
and what you're talking about is the sort of training that goes along. Georgia has a rule of law that a lot of states do, and they call it the one bite rule. And if you have no reason to think that your dog is an inherently aggressive breed of dog, and it's not subject to local ordinance that would deal with something like that, then the rule is just what it sounds like. You get one bite, right? The dog can, until you're put on notice as the owner of that pet that this dog has a propensity to bite, it's not your responsibility. But once that dog has bitten somebody, and it's not the playful nipping around and you're trying to have a tug of war with a chew toy and he gets you on the finger. It's not that. It's the dog has bitten somebody, has been aggressive.
Yeah.
You're exonerated from any liability there. But when you know that it happens, now you are responsible for it. And what it means is you have to take reasonable precautions to make sure it doesn't happen again. So it might mean that dog needs to be on a leash at all times. It might mean that dog needs to be behind a fence at all times and not running freely in your neighborhood, or that you are putting a muzzle on the dog if it's a real problem. It doesn't mean you're completely automatically liable for whatever happens. It means you have to take reasonable precautions to make sure it doesn't happen.
I think one thing is don't assume that everybody else is a dog lover or knows how to react and behave around dogs. I've had dogs all my life, and one of the things I've seen is that when a person acts like they're afraid of the dog goes defensive.
Yes, you're
and
right.
sometimes gets offensive defensively. So just don't assume that because we're all dog lovers that everybody is, or that, oh, he just nipped me a little bit, didn't leave a mark. No, that to some people that may be a traumatic event. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel sorry for those people.
Yeah, right.
And I don't want that to happen. But, not everybody has to have their skin broken and blood to say, I've been scared of your dog and bit by your dog.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, it's fascinating. Go ahead. What were you about to say?
No, I'm saying, and it doesn't even have to be a bite because it could just be an aggressive lunge or a dog that jumps up on
Knock
people.
somebody down.
I'm not worried about a playful dog jumping up on me, but my 90-year-old mother-in-law who weighs 30 pounds, would be toppled by something
Absolutely
like that.
right.
So,
And you could break a bone, especially at that age.
absolutely. So you have to be mindful of your dog's behavior like that. And so that's just another example of how if you're having people to your home, have some self-awareness. What is the situation in my household?
But one of the things Bruce and I have talked about in many shows is we'd be more than happy to look at your automobile policy to make sure you have sufficient coverages and your homeowner's policy.
Yeah.
And in many times, if you're with one of the premium companies, and I just send people to the better companies, get your automobile policy at the same place you get your homeowners, because for a very small amount of money, you can buy an umbrella, which gives you a lot of coverage and lets you sleep a little. Not that you want something to happen and you say, big deal, but
that's what insurance is.
you want to keep your stuff.
That's right. Yeah, no doubt about it. This is Extra 106.3, Your Day in Court.